You asked, we answered number two. How's everyone doing? I hope you guys are having a great day on YouTube land. Here on Twitch. They're getting it right off the bat. If you guys want to join us on Twitch, it is usually, I'll point this out, usually Fridays and Sundays and sometimes Tuesdays, depending. But just stay on our Discord. This is how we update everyone. So please, if you guys want to go ahead and join us, feel free. We're more than welcome. We have Brady again. He's on this side. Oh, the beautiful and bright Brady. We'll just we'll just jump into it. You guys already know who I am. You guys should know who he is because we already did the first one. Here's the second one, and let me read it out to you. Hello, Ed. Or I'm going to say Brady as well in this situation. I'm an adult male in his early years of college. I think I've done well in all my life to not fall down the incel pipeline. Taking care to maintain healthy relationships and respecting my partners as the people they are. Awesome. But I often find myself having very insecure thoughts. It might be very likely that I have a very deep urge to control my partners because I literally can't help but become unable to stop thinking about them. Not only when it comes to ways to maintain the relationship, which I've heard people with low self-worth often feel the need to keep providing the self, but also out of this temporary fear that my partner might be cheating on me or giving somebody attention. I overanalyze text, and I'm often worried that I won't be able to hang out or if there's problems in the relationship because I can't tell whose faults they are. The interesting thing about these things is that they are very temporary, and I usually cool down less than an hour later and look at my situation logically again, without any insecurity bogging down or distorting my perception of reality and decision-making skills. I don't want to have these thoughts. I believe I heavily align with the avoidant attachment disorder. Every single symptom is found in me, every way of thinking. But maybe none of that is relevant, or maybe it struck a chord with you. I'd love to hear what you can say about people in my situation who have cruel, illogical, insecure thoughts despite being very aware of their wrongness. I hope this can benefit other people too, and I want to thank you for taking the time to do this. Well, first off, yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. It must have taken a lot, to go ahead and write something like that, and I appreciate the vulnerability and the honesty on that. Brady, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, it's never easy to kind of critically evaluate yourself and, come up with stuff that we don't like, right? Um, I would say that, it is very good and noteworthy that there's like a pretty high awareness of this behavior,
Right.
Um, that is that is a pretty essential aspect of, like insecurities. Everyone has insecurities, and we all have urges to kind of get those insecurities under control.
Right.
And I would say that if it's very fleeting, right? Like if you know that they are something that only kind of bother you for a little bit and you're able to kind of cool down from it, right? Like we can't get into diagnosables, we can't get into disorders or these sorts of things. So I would say in terms of like long-term uh, wanting to change a behavior pattern like this, that is something that therapy could absolutely help with. But just from a general knowledge perspective, what we develop insecurities over time. It's
Right.
a very developmental thing. You do not usually develop an insecurity after just one specific event. It's something that kind of builds up over multiple years of similar events, right?
Right.
And so how we react to those insecurities is also kind of, it becomes a part of our nature. The person who just kind of is able to get over their insecurities very quickly, um, versus a person who finds himself a little more arrested by them. All it really means is that your mind has it's working on a system to deal with these insecurities right now, and that system seems to be, okay, I know they're happening. I know I have these these kinds of thoughts or these kinds of urges, and I'm trying to either suppress them or just let them pass over, right,
Right.
until I kind of cool down from them. I would say, tap into that as a skill set of your awareness seems very high of that you're doing this, and you are thinking about ways to not fight yourself on it, right? Like not necessarily trying to suppress the insecurity, but trying to just understand that it will pass over you. But in terms of a long-term solution, that gets into like schema work,
Hmm.
right? Insecurities are pretty baked into the concept of schema work. A schema is like any uh, very fundamental idea you have about something, right? And that can range from something very simple like I have a schema that mothers are caring and protective. I have a schema that, you know, um, thunderstorms are dangerous,
Right.
which they might not be most of the time, but that's like a hard fixed idea that I have developed based on some sort of experience. But we also have these about ourselves. We have
Right.
schemas about ourselves that become very fundamental to our view of ourselves. And we might have a schema that says, I'm not a very confident person. That might not be very accurate. It just might be what we believe. Just like, thunderstorms being dangerous might not be actually that accurate. So an insecurity is just another form of this. It's a belief about ourselves that has become very fixed and can require a lot of work to undo, to challenge. Um, so again, in answering these questions in a non-therapeutic way, the best I think we can do is kind of identify what area of work this kind of problem would take place in. This sounds like a very schema-focused
Approach.
situation to
Yeah.
me.
No, I actually really agree with you on that. Like the first thing that came to mind when I was reading this is schema, and then the second thing was it's interesting that you already know what attachment you are, because like you'd granted, I for those of you on Discord, I know I put up a whole link so that you guys can go ahead and take an attachment test online. Not really like one of those fake ones. It's actually like one that like is the ones that we use for Bulby and all of those. And thank you guys for doing that. That was actually a really big just test and help to go ahead and get an insight as to who you guys are, because you guys know I love you guys. For this individual here, it's like if you did manage to go ahead and do that, and that's what you came up with, or what you're reading and coming into. One thing I might suggest is sort of looking back, because often the problems that we're facing today through an attachment perspective comes from our childhood. It comes from growing up, comes from the environment that we were in, and it might help you at least to come to terms with what is causing that, like, i.e., you know what, as a kid I was told to not share my toys. It's gonna sound fucking horrible and I know it, but like this is with another client that I had, right? He had very, very just a possessive nature over his significant other, and it came down to the ideologue or ideology that like his parents at a very, very young age told him, that they put this ideas that like how do I put it? Like, you shouldn't like whatever you love shouldn't be a part of someone else's enjoyment as well. Like toys, anything you want to go ahead and do. And it even came down to video games as well, where if they were playing video games and someone was talking to their partner, they would get jealous, they would instantly get triggered, and stuff like that. Something that I can go ahead and give you advice. I think this is general advice for anyone. If you guys are finding out that you guys are like, having moments like this where you guys are getting like triggered, or you know what, like you instantly like you're with your partner and then you start feeling insecure, logically start thinking, huh, what is it? Is it the fact that like she went to go get a beer at the bar and I was left alone for this period of time? It might help you for when you like decide to go into therapy, or you might decide to go get professional help, that you can go ahead and like identify not just the fact that, hey, you know what, I have this thing where jealousy and insecurity is a big factor, but now I can pinpoint it to I get really insecure, and this might help you a lot. Use I statements when communicating with your partner, because if you go like, "You're wrong. You're horrible. You make me feel insecure. I have to analyze your text messages. You're hiding your phone. What you're doing is I'm building up this wall." If I was telling Brady this, well, you're horrible. You left me alone at the table. You went to go get a beer. Blah 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 blah. Instantly, I'm putting up this giant wall in which I'm talking to a wall now. If I'm like, "Hey
Never
Brady,"
say
I would never say that to you. You know that. But if instantly I was like, "Brady, I feel very insecure when you went to go get a drink. It might be because, my brain started racing 1,000 miles per hour and it was a bit of anxiety. Or it might have just been because, I saw this guy looking at you and my insecurity flared up. I just wanted to let you know. At this point, it's going to be very hard for Brady to be like, well, you're wrong, because how can you tell someone's feelings are wrong? Just throwing that out there. You can be like, hey, you know what? Maybe that wasn't the case, but like to really like gramp into a situation into a big argument point, that's going to be a lot harder. So start using I statements. I feel this when you're talking with your partner, and that might establish a new relationship boundary for you guys. Start talking about boundaries in your relationship, please. Anything you want to
Yeah,
add, Brady?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, like I said, I think the whole point about like being pretty aware of them is a great start, right?
Right.
In any kind of psychological work or work on anything. I mean, it doesn't even have to be psychological. You want to be able to very concretely describe what your problem is, because that's how you're going to be very able to concretely describe the solution once you find it.
Right.
So it's great to say, I have an insecurity about jealousy or possessiveness, but you want to be able to narrow that down to, I get jealous when my partner interacts with someone of the opposite sex in these situations, right? Like you want to be able to narrow things down as much as you can, because that's going to bring you closer to, the setting that this insecurity gets activated in, the kinds of people that might have to be around for it to happen as well. And also, like, the more you know about that, right? If you've identified that very specifically and you know that that's a setting, like let's say a bar where this happens, you'll be able to know the next time you go to a bar what to expect from yourself.
Right.
Because you'll be able to know, like, look, I know I have this insecurity more at bars than I do at restaurants, like, trying to narrow that down to
And
when it happens, how it happens, again, being open and communicative with your partner. Edgar's point about I statements is also really great. Like, there's a difference between, well, I saw you looking at him,
right.
versus I feel like saw this and I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it's something I'm picking up on. Like, you don't want to assume knowledge. You just want to present what you think about it, I guess.
And one thing I can go ahead and like say this, especially for anyone that might um, need it in this situation in any relationship. If a relationship is never going to be 50-50, okay? And I'm throwing this out there, guys. A relationship, theoretically, and like, for the healthiest relationships, it should be 100% an individual, 100% another individual. You're both coming together to make life beautiful. Granted, sometimes you might have to go 110 and help out, dip into that little bit of a resistance and vice versa. But that comes with the healthiness of who you are as an individual. So the best thing that I can tell you is when it comes to, because first off, getting that feeling of like in the pit of your stomach that your partner might be cheating on you is one of the worst sensations in the world, and I can empathize
Yeah.
150% because it sucks. It fucking sucks. But it's also like, hey, you know what? Is this something that happened from previous relationships, and how do I start healing, little by little, to make sure that I can also give 100% of who I am into this relationship as much as they can, and that's a talk worth
Yeah.
having.
And it's a difficult talk to have because you don't want to just, you know, on a random day bring that up, right? Like there's a point to being honest and using like I statements and whatever else, but you also don't just want to be like, "Hey, by the way, I feel like you're cheating on me."
Yeah,
Right? Like
yeah.
there might be a natural that might be an honest statement, but you don't really just want to bring that up
Right.
out of nowhere. So the question becomes, if you're at that level where that's a part of your insecurity and that's not a conversation you've had much dialogue about, trying to reach that point, like it's not a good opener for that
Right.
kind of conversation. But it might be worth, sitting down with your partner and saying like, you know, there are things I want to discuss about the way I feel about things, and I'd like to give you a little bit of background about how I feel them. And don't start with that. Don't be
Right.
like, okay, now that we've entered this dialogue, I want to tell you about why I think you're cheating on me.
Yeah,
Like
that no, please
that's
don't.
that's gonna drive up your partner's anxiety, even beyond your own. And so there is something to be said about being honest
Yeah.
with your partner and being able, but you want to work on like that's a conversation you feel comfortable having. And that does not start with raising the issue by itself. It starts with, uh, talking about insecurities in a broad sense, and kind of working your way up to it. Always trying to have a sense for like when is it appropriate to really be honest about what you're feeling, because you may find that along the way that fear goes away.
Right. And let me just quickly jump in here and say, if you're in a relationship right now, one of the best things that you guys can do, especially if you're in chat, is have check-ins, i.e., every couple of months. Hey, you know what? A relationship is not that you guys are together forever and that's it. A relationship should be like a contract. Hey, you know what? I really enjoy the fact that, like, you're getting to know me, my parents, my family, whatever. I just really dislike it when, like, you're spending more time with your friends than you are with me, on the weekends, or having that conversation where it's like, I really like that you're doing this. This is something that we can work on together. Have those check-ins every couple of months or however much, however you guys feel it's necessary. Super duper important. Talk about boundaries, both in and out, like, in bed, out of bed. What does that mean for you? How do you feel? Talk about consent. What is the meaning of consent, please, for anyone that's watching and for yourself. And last but not least, be comfortable. Like, and this is the number one thing: be comfortable being vulnerable to your partner. Because if you're not able to be vulnerable with them, how do you expect them to be vulnerable with you?
Yeah, communication is the foundation of all successful relationships. And I don't just mean like y'all talk about stuff or you
Right.
share interests. It means like you're processing events, you're processing your relationship. I know it can sound tedious, like we have to talk about our relationship every week. Let's schedule our weekly sit down to do this. It doesn't have to be like that, right? But it should be something that you check in with them, and to make sure that you care more about the result of your communication than the principle of the matter, right? Like
Exactly.
if you're having an argument or something, like, do you care more about, well, on principle, I don't think you should have said or done this, or do you care more about the result of how do we move forward with this, right? Like, making sure your priorities with communication and the relationship broadly are clear, and they don't have to be 100% aligned. Like, you don't have to fuse into one
Yeah.
single unit, but you should understand his or her or their priorities, and they should understand yours as well.
Exactly. And with that being said, thank you guys. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and open and sharing this. And I'm sure that it's helped a lot of people out there who have something similar going on in their life. And it's super important to go ahead and like touch on situations like that and bring up cases like this. So I really, really appreciate you. I hope that this helps a little bit. If you have any further questions, feel free to email. It's always open and available to you guys, and it's going to be
Yeah,
down in the
thank you.
description below.